All right, so bear with me a little bit as I sort of redo this, but what we want to do is we want to click on the number of the student athlete that you want to move, and then come over, press and hold the shift button, click their category, do Control X on a PC and Command X on a Mac for cut, and then Control V on a PC or Command V on a Mac to paste. And you're going to move them into their seating order. Are there any questions about this process?
Sean, this is Abby Walker. I have a question. You
Okay,
said say your seventh grade A boys, one of them doesn't come to the first race, but he was ranked ahead of the other
correct.
kid.
Mhm.
At the second race, is he still ranked ahead of the kid, even though he didn't go to that first race?
Nope, he is not.
Okay. Cool.
So that second race, everybody gets their call up based on their current standings in the league and that kid. So we'll go through these lists and actually pull everybody that does the first race. And so they won't even appear on your lists anymore. And then that way, it'll just be the kids that still need to be ranked. And if, say, you have a kid that doesn't do the first race, and maybe there's two kids in that category that didn't do the first race, and after seeing them for a bit more, you're like, that order's a little bit different, you can switch them, and then we'll be able to do it that way. So this is really only good for the random call-ups. After that, there's no need. Other questions?
Sean, if we are continuing to do exercises that'll help us figure out order post the 24th, is it possible to change after that?
Nope. They've got to actually start generating all of those lists. So what Jim has set is the 24th is his hard deadline so that he can go in and start doing all the work.
Hey, Sean,
yes.
This question is about call-ups, but not specifically about the spreadsheet we're looking at.
Okay.
It's about if somebody's a JV1 rider and moves up to JV2, but there's also JV2 riders. How do they that were JV2 last year? How do those call-ups compare?
It's based on point total.
Point total.
Yep. So the point total of the overall standings, and we'll just rank them based on whatever their points are.
So theoretically, you might have a JV2 that won last year. No, that wouldn't happen. Was third last year, and would get a third place call up because you got two JV1s that had more points that came up or something like that.
Potentially, yes, that is a possibility.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Any other questions?
Hey, Sean, Jeff here.
Yes, Jeff.
This is more of a confirmation of a process question, I guess. You've already published the random call-up numbers by team, and now we have this spreadsheet that we filled out. So yes. I take it then there's no longer a circle or anything like that. It's going to be based on this spreadsheet and our team's number. You're already going to have all the names listed, and their names will be called, and they'll go up in that order. We're not doing the circle thing anymore, right? No and yes. No and
so yes. We'll still have the circle, but it won't be going around and like, okay, next. We'll have a full list and we'll just be calling names, but rather than it just being a chaotic mass of kids that we're trying to yell for, we'll still do the team lineup, but you'll know who everybody is and what their call-ups are. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Okay.
So Brian is going to use his big boy Marine voice and he's going to call every single name of every kid that's racing, regardless of if they raced last year or not. So everyone will get a call up. And that's why we need to get that stuff in by the 24th. Now, one question I've gotten today that I just want to confirm with Jim, I believe Jim is on the call, and so he can add confirmation to this. But if you see that your team does not have a tab at the bottom, that is because you don't have any category where you have more than one student athlete. Is that correct, Jim?
That's right. There are eight or 10 teams that didn't have any or multiple riders.
Okay, so those coaches can breathe a sigh of relief that they don't have to do this. All right.
Hey,
Any,
Sean.
yes.
Sorry, this is Ryan. I hope this
Yeah.
is quick. I just looked at my tab for the first time, and there are 3 kids that are in the same category that are already placed in order. I mean, is that just a mistake? I mean, I can reorder that, right?
Yeah, you can reorder. You have complete editing rights. So if you don't
Okay.
agree with this, you can reorder it by all means.
Thanks.
Yep, no problem.
Question, Sean, on the spreadsheet, we don't have to save or anything. We just do the edit
Nope.
and that's it.
Yep.
Okay.
Welcome to the wonderful world of Google Docs. It just does it. It's just there. So yeah.
Very good. Yeah. I'm
So
done. I
no
just,
need to download, upload, none of that. Just do it right here. All good, all done.
all right, very good.
All right. Excellent. Hopefully that helps with any concerns or questions that you might have had about that. So I wanted to make sure that we all got a good explanation for that, and I could help out in any way that I could while I had you all here, because I think it's a lot easier to just show it. All right. Let's go back to our meeting. So that essentially is what we need you to have done by Friday. The deadline really is Friday evening. So the sooner you can get that done, the better. And then let's talk about the wave structure. So any category that has greater than 50 registered student athletes is going to be divided in half. Unless, so I've tried to play around with a way that we could word this, and I really can't. So it's going to be a long explanation. So up to 100, it gets divided in half. If we go over 100, then we start dividing into 3 groups that will go off. So let's just hypothetically say that we don't have any category that's going to have more than 100 student athletes in it. So we get 100 that register, we divide them into 50, 2 heats of 50. The first 50 call-ups are in the first heat. The second 50 call-ups are in the second heat. They will race separately. There will be a certain amount of time buffer depending upon what the categories are. And for those middle school athletes, especially the 6th grade, we don't have any historical data on them. So we're trying to really build in a big buffer because we don't know any better at this point. And what will happen is we'll say go for the first heat, we'll wait that buffer time, we'll say go for the second heat. They'll race in these independent heats, but then we'll take their overall finish times and combine them together to get a complete finish order for the one race. Are there questions about that?
Yeah, I actually have a little question on that. So in essence, we're turning it into a time trial because the first wave has no idea what the second wave is doing. So you can't race it like a traditional cross-country race. And so the kids in the first race basically just have to approach it like a time trial, go as hard as they can. And like in the JV1 freshman categories, you have the second wave of freshmen going off basically 13 minutes after the start of JV1, which they'll be within 2 minutes of finishing their first lap. So before they go into the woods for the second lap, theoretically, the leaders of the JV1 will be running into the back of the freshmen.
So let me let me take the first part of your question, and then I'll turn the second part of your question over to Jim or Brian, who have been working on this. So to answer your first part of your question, if we're talking about sixth grade, because there's no historical data on them and they're all going to be randomly seeded, then hypothetically, yes, they're treating that like a time trial for one lap, for the one lap race that they're doing. But for every other category, they are being seeded based on last year's results and then the random call-ups. So let's say your freshman category has 100 student athletes. Most of those student athletes are going to be returning from last season. So that first 50, those are kids ranked based on their overall results from last year. So that's the top 50 of the overall results from last year. And then the second group of 50, most of those will be returners with some of the new to us student athletes in the back of that group. So while it's not exactly a time trial, it's two independent races, it gives some of those kids really that are in the middle, that's where you kind of see I think the most ability to move around. So the starters of the second race and the last of the group in the first wave, those are the kids that can potentially out compete each other and see some swapping around for the call-ups for the next race. And that's, I guess it's more in line with they're racing the people around them, and then their times are going to be kind of bear out how well they did, if that makes sense. And then for the second part of your question, Jim, you've been working with this the most. So you want to talk about that buffer time that you've got and how that's going to look on race day?
Sure. So first of all, for the middle school, we set the buffer between the races for the first week at 15 minutes with the idea it's a single lap race. We can run them one after the other. And the probability, last year at Browns Creek, no kid from the second group would have caught a kid from the first group. So that's the quick explanation there. And subsequent races, we're going to shorten the day by dropping that gap from 15 minutes to 5 minutes because we'll have sorted the kids. For the freshman JV1 race, we have a tighter gap between groups 1 and groups 2 so that we could maintain that 7-minute gap that we've had in the past for freshmen, the front of the freshmen to the back of the second JV1 group. And our rationale there is that is why we're sorting everybody. We're trying to put as many of the kids where we know their speeds in that first group, which will hopefully mean most of the slower kids are going to be in group 2. So that's how we're trying to manage how quickly group 2 catches up to the back of group 1. Does that make sense?
I sort of understand it, but what I'm saying is JV1 group 1 catching freshman group 2 is going to happen really, really quick. And so you have a bunch of new students, arguably they're new students because they're called up in the back, that are going to be dealing with some kids coming through really, really fast.
And this is what happens every year. The back of the freshman group gets caught by the JV1s, and the back of the JV1 group gets caught by the freshmen. And that's just what happens with the multi-lap race when you have two groups on the course.
Yeah, okay, I understand. But judging by your paper, you were sending the freshmen off. It looked like they were going to go off and they were just going to be like 2 minutes out from the JV guys, 2 or 3 minutes out from the JV guys already coming around to finish their first lap. So I could have just looked at that wrong. I got you.
So it'll be about, the JV ones last year did about a 17-minute lap. So the back of freshmen will be about 4 minutes ahead of that, and they'll get caught probably about 3 to 4 minutes into their lap, somewhere along there.
Well, I will tell you, you probably have kids in JV1 right now that are capable of at least mid 15-minute laps. So I think it might be closer than you think, but you know, that we'll just have to see. But I appreciate it.
All right, do we have some other questions about the wave structure?
Based on this, Sean, I'm just wondering if you're a new rider, and you will be in a wave 2, you essentially have to, well, yeah, you're going to be placed at the back, so it's a time trial. You have to go for your best time so that you can get into the first 50 from the back 50. Is there no way? Yeah, that's tough with somebody that doesn't maybe has experience racing other than NICA and is coming into it. Is there any
But that's-
consideration there?
No, because that's
No.
the way it would normally be, even if we had, let's say we started 100 kids at the same time, it would be that way. This actually gives the potential for them to have a little bit more breathing room. If they, you know, let's say you've got a rock star starting in 40th place of the second wave, and they pass the 40 kids in front of them, they've got kind of open sailing for a while, and they can sort of start picking their way through the next group. And even if they don't pick their way through the next group, like by catching that back wave, you know, they've made up that time differential. So, you know, it reminds me of American Flyers when he's like, I'm right here, but I'm actually 3 minutes ahead. So, you know, that's what that happens is if you make up that time differential, you're ahead of everybody that you're actually riding the wheels of. But there isn't any way to equitably say like, well, this kid has outside results. Like it's got to be NICA gets the priority because they raced with us last season, and that's who we have data on. But after this first race, then they've got their chance to.
It'll suss out.
Yep. Other questions? All right. No one recognizes the American Flyers reference. That's okay. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm going to let that stew a little bit. If you've never seen a classic American cycling movie, like definitely Google it. All right. There will not be Sunday course inspection. We've talked about that before, but just as a reminder. And then home team list that was sent to all the head coaches and team directors. Please check out that email that was sent a while ago by Diane LeBlanc, who is here. And if you have any questions about this, now would be a great time to ask Diane. All right, the deafening silence of everyone got a good explanation from Diane already. Excellent.
Sean, sorry.
Yes.
Right, for Holy Trinity. I had spoken to you, Diane, and I don't know if you got the answers to my questions in terms of people volunteering that are younger than 18 and what supervision they needed and whether juniors and seniors can volunteer on their own. Because I'm going to open up volunteers to our school.
All right. I first of all, I apologize, Carolyn. I thought I responded to that email. Apparently I did not. For anyone that's middle school, 9th and 10th grade, we have in having the discussion, we need to have one adult for, it needs to be a 1-to-2 ratio, 1 adult for every 2 students. That would be middle school or 9th and 10th graders. For the juniors and seniors, we're gonna need to have somebody in the 10 area for your team that will be responsible for them. So that I think pretty much answers the question that you had. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Carolyn. Thank you. And I apologize again for,
Yep, that's okay. I haven't sent anything out yet, so you're good.
okay.
It's coming in the next few days.
Okay, thanks. Thanks.
All right, and then last but not least, if you have any pit zone mapping requests, like you want your team to be beside another team, or you want your team to definitely not be beside the Wilco Wolves, you want to definitely email Ben about that so that he can plot things accordingly for the pit zone area.
Yeah,
And
Sean,
also,
for
what's that,
future
Ben?
meetings, future meetings, can we go ahead and take that out? Because that's.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, totally. Are we good?
Yes,
Everybody's
sir.
good? All right. So I'm not going to be anywhere near your team?
Nope,
Okay, excellent.
but you'll still hear me.
Well, yeah, everybody's going to hear you, even over the speakers. All right. So last but not least, if you know student athletes who would like to sing or play instruments for the national anthem, I know we've already got one person lined up who's going to be covering Cranking at the Creek. Is that correct, Ben?
That is correct.
Awesome. And so if you have others, a cappella with instrumentals, we can play music, however they want it. We would love to have more student athletes who will be able to sing the national anthem for us on race day.
Yep. And we've got another group of students that we're working with that will probably meet there at Browns Creek to discuss that option to perform the national anthem at future races. So find me in all of the crazy running that we're doing, and we'll discuss those options. So please don't think this is a one and done. I want to get as many students in there as we can.
Awesome. And then last but not least, Shell, do you have any programs, events, info, updates for us?
Yeah, I just want to touch base about the grit pre-ride and re-ride options to kind of clarify the difference between the two, but to also ask that everyone help communicate that to your student athletes. So the grit pre-ride from now on is going to be specifically geared towards beginners only. We do have grit ambassadors joining that ride who are experienced student athletes, but they serve as the mentors for our beginners. Experienced student athletes should be signing up for the grit re-ride, which is new this year. They don't have to sign up for the re-ride. They do need to register for the pre-ride though. So beginners should be signing up in the pit zone for the pre-ride. Experienced student athletes should be coming to the grit re-ride, which is from 3 o'clock until 3:30. Any female student athlete or female coach is welcome to come join that re-ride. We'll just send groups out on a first serve, first come basis. The goal of that was to help accommodate larger numbers while lowering the number on the pre-ride. So we're getting people back in plenty of time for their team pre-rides and not having such an overwhelming number of people try to get out on course in that small amount of time that we had to work with. Does anybody have any questions for me on that?
Yes, Shell. Sorry, I haven't been on the grit calls to ask these questions. Do you still need coach help for the pre-ride?
Yes, all of the coach volunteer slots for grit are on the volunteer sign up with all of the other ones.
Okay.
So a couple other things.
Shell,
Yep.
sorry, one question on the volunteer signups. Is there backup male coaches needed?
I will honestly take all the coaches I can get because I have a feeling with the re-ride not requiring registration in the pit zone, we're going to have a lot of kids. So as long as you're not opposed to ending up possibly being an extra coach in your group, or if you are an extra and you're not needed, if you're not offended by not being necessary, I'd be happy to have anybody come over to help out. So.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Michelle, Jeff here. Is your grit re-ride going to be taking place at the same time that the teams are doing their pre-ride re-rides?
Yes, so it shouldn't have any effect on anybody else. We're not closing the course for that to happen. They'll just be sending out groups at the same time as everybody else.
All right, so then the part of my question is so our female grit ambassadors or our female riders won't be doing the pre-ride, re-ride with their team. They'll be doing it with grit.
You would need to speak to your ambassadors. They all have different roles, but they should be communicating that to their coaches and parents. So.
Okay.
Cool. And I got a couple other things. Team Trail Corps, just make sure you're logging those hours. We're going to be awarding student athletes who have logged 10 hours with a t-shirt at the award ceremonies. And on the coaches communication email, there were links for character awards and the race plate badges. So character awards, the nomination form is open right now. Any head coach or team director can nominate any student athlete who is exemplifying those character traits on that form. There's a different variety of awards that we're going to be recognizing them for. So this is a great way for us to be recognizing student athletes for something other than placing on podium. So take a look at that. It'll be open all season until a week before the last race. So if you've got some student athletes that are really showing exemplary behavior, even if it's not on a race weekend, if it's just with their team, it's out in their larger mountain biking community, make sure you take a minute, give them a nomination so we can celebrate them. And race plate badges are going to be another way we're trying to recognize student athletes for achievements that are not on the podium. So there's a lot of variety. There's some that are geared towards beginners, some that are geared towards Team Trail Corps, just different ways that student athletes are challenging themselves and achieving cool things outside of race weekend. So make sure you take a look at that. There's probably lots of ways you can recognize quite a few of your student athletes through that, and they can display those on their race plates during race weekend so that everybody in our league can see the cool things that they're achieving. So that form is open for people to be filling that out for your student athletes right now. So. And the last thing is we have a league scavenger hunt that we're going to do. It's going to be open to everyone in the league. It'll take place at race number 5, so the Mayhem at Mayodan race. And there's a form to register your scavenger hunt team. The whole point of the scavenger hunt is to get teams to interact together, get to know each other better. So there's a lot of emphasis on mixing and matching people from different teams in order to create a scavenger hunt team. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Encourage your student athletes to recruit some folks from other teams to get a team in place before we get to that weekend so they can take part in that. We're gonna have some cool prizes. It should be a pretty fun time. So that's all I've got.
Awesome. All right. I have a question that came up in the chat that I just wanted to address, and it was about middle schoolers who get a mechanical and get outside assistance. Do they get a penalty? If it's a 1-lap middle school race, so 6, 7B, 8B, the answer is no. We would rather them have somebody fix it quickly and then get back on the trail, and we're not going to assess any penalties. But if it's an 8A or a 7A category racer, they are responsible for repairing their own, and if they get outside mechanical assistance, they will get that outside mechanical assistance penalty. And just a reminder that it's a 5-minute penalty if they get outside assistance, but if they don't report it to the chief referee, which is myself, or at Salisbury it'll be someone else, then it goes up to a 10-minute penalty. But most everybody is pretty good about self-reporting, so it's not been an issue. But just make sure that they are aware that they do need to self-report that they got an outside assistance. All right. Can you tell us how many females are in varsity, JV2, JV1, and freshman categories? As far as registered for the races, since registration isn't done yet, I don't know those totals, but perhaps someone else on the call does.
Sean, I don't have them in front of me, but I can certainly give a follow-up of total registration numbers. You're correct. We're still, pending Browns Creek numbers, but I can give you a follow-up, Abby, on that.
For those petitioning, should they be registering before their petition is decided? Meaning if they register in one class and they're approved for another class, will they be moved to the new class? That's always been the case, I believe. It shouldn't be an issue. So if they've registered and they petition up, then we just move their categories. Can verbal help be given without penalty? Yes. Can you tell us how many females? Let's see, we asked that. Let's see. When in the year/season does counting TTC hours start or end to be included for a particular year or season? So for TTC hours completed between June and November, how do these count? That sounds like a Shell Frost question.
So I am admittedly not a complete expert on Teen Trail Corps yet. I'm trying to get there, but Barry had communicated to someone a couple weeks ago that hours that are completed over the season can be logged once the new season starts. So I would say once we open a new season, student athletes can log any hours they completed since the last season finished.
And to, my experience, whenever you go in to log those hours, it asks you for the date of the work being done. So you put in the date. And so if you just put the dates that you're working, it should automatically suss out where those count and where they don't.
Sean,
Right. Yes.
for your ranking spreadsheet, for any of the kids that had a successful petition, it looks like they're still in their other area. Should I go ahead and make an adjustment in italics and say this kid needs to be here when I'm ranking them, moving them from right to left?
Jim, is that going to be an issue for you?
If you have a student that got moved up, go ahead and just list them in their correct one. If you have a student that's pending, put them in both. And then whatever category they wind up with on registration day, I will slot them accordingly.
Sounds good. Thanks.
And I would say, honestly, it's really going to be a wash if they do the first race because they're going to get a call up. So I think it's pretty safe.
This
All
is
right.
Dave McBride from Cape Fear. I'd sent a couple of
Yes.
emails about shuffling our sub teams because of school districts.
Right.
In the spreadsheet, they hadn't changed, and I don't think it's changed in Pit Zone yet.
We've got to honestly figure that one out, Dave.
Okay.
And that's gotten kind of bumped down our to-do list. We're still trying to figure out how to do it. The NICA advice is for us to create teams in Pit Zone that we then kind of put everybody in, but there's some potential issues with that that are like, it would end up kind of costing us money because we're registering more teams and we don't want to do that. We want it to just be a scoring thing. So we're looking at that, but we don't want to overwhelm our scorers because we have a fairly kind of new-ish scoring crew taking over this season. And we don't want to hit them with too much. We want to kind of get everything started. So we'll be working on that. And as we figure things out, we'll get back to you. I'm sorry to put you on the back burner like that.
Fair enough. Thanks.
And honestly, like, you don't need to worry about anything. It's all us. So it's not going to negatively affect you in any way, if that makes sense.
Yep. Understood. Thanks.
All right. Excellent. Are there any other questions?
Sean, it's Brian, just with a few comments before we close.
All right.
Okay, want to first thanks everyone for all the feedback and thanks coaches for what you do. Just as it comes to wave structure and call ups and some of the changes we've implemented for this season, I want to remind you that that's because we anticipate bigger numbers and we've got to do that safely. And so the model we're using is borrowed from several other leagues in NICA that use a similar model, and they've done it safely, and they've got really good feedback from across their leagues about implementing it. But keep the feedback coming, and we'll modify as appropriate. And again, we will only run multiple fields if we have to. Right now, as of this morning, 350 are registered for Browns Creek. We're a week out from that. And when we see the final registration numbers next Monday, we will publish an updated race flyer by Wednesday of next week. So by 1 March, you'll see a race flyer with what we believe the wave schedule for Sunday will be. It might be multiple fields. It might be just one category for some of those bigger groups, but we'll see. We'll get that out. And then just a reminder for everyone, I'll host the town hall that night, Wednesday, 1 March, 8 p.m. I will get the invitation out with the Zoom link. That's for coaches. That's for parents. Anyone that has a question about the flyer for that weekend. I'll be online with a few key staff members and we'll walk you through what's coming for that weekend, just so we answer all the questions possible. Great job to the home teams for Browns Creek. We are 50% signed up for volunteers. Diane, that might be the earliest we've ever had 50% for any one of our weekends. I would just want to, remind everyone that now that home teams have had the first shot, those spots are open for everybody. So if you've got hard chargers that want to volunteer for Browns Creek from any team across the league, go ahead and sign up to do that. We still need a lot of spots filled on Sunday, it looks like. So please get the word out and encourage your folks to sign up for that. And thanks to Shell for covering the awards information. I pushed that out last week. It's linked on the website. Please give that a look. We're trying to recognize as many of our athletes as possible this season. And we're doing a couple new things to do that. If you got any questions about that, certainly let us know. And Shell, let's just get together, make sure we're clear on Teen Trail Corps, and we'll just update the awards information sheet with the Teen Trail Corps hours, the ones that count for this season. And Abby, I got your follow-up on the student athlete female registration numbers. Got it for action. Thanks, Sean.
All right. If there's no more questions or comments, I've got one question for everybody. And that is, when would you like to have these coaches calls? Because right now we're doing one a month, but as we move into race season, do you want to have them before the race? Do you want to have them after the race? Do you want to have more than one? Like if we have 2 races in a month, do you want to have one before or after each race? So I'd like your feedback, and you don't have to give it to me now. You can drop me an email and just kind of let me know what your thoughts and feelings are. If you just want to keep it with this one a month, that's also a valid choice. But just let me know what you think, and whether or not you feel that more would be better or not. But I would appreciate any feedback I can get on that to plan the coaches' calls ahead. All right. Let's see. There's one more thing. Looking ahead to Dark Mountain, I thought on a prior meeting that someone was looking into getting one of those campgrounds open for us. This would also be really helpful for team trailer parking, given the site is so tight. So I think someone is already addressing that. There's only one back entrance that can be used for that campground, which was a gated 90-degree turn, not trailer friendly. Don't know that is even viable option for use at all at this point, but definitely not for trailers.
So for Dark Mountain, Warrior Creek Campground is not available for the first race on April 1st, 2nd weekend.
All right.
And just for additional information, this morning I posted the draft flyer for Dark Mountain on the website. It does list other camping venues around Dark Mountain for folks to sign up for.
There's also a hotel that was just completely gutted from outside to inside, just off of Highway 421 right there at the college and the stoplight. It's called the Red Roof Inn. When I say gutted, I do mean gutted from wall to wall and everything replaced from the ceiling down. So there's about, I think, 120 rooms at that hotel. That's complete brand new.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And if you'll just drop me a line to let me know when you'd like to meet during the race season, I would appreciate it. Otherwise, thanks for joining us this evening. And if you have any other questions, just reach out. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. All right. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.